Hello, today we're talking cottagecore. Now if you aren't familiar with this term, it is a type of aesthetic with a lot of this and a lot of this. I was recently introduced to this a couple weeks ago and I really liked it. I wouldn't say it's my natural style as I prefer darker colors over pastels, but I did really like the nature side of it, so I came up with a couple DIYs that I thought you guys would like, so here they are. Up first, we are making a notebook, so I grabbed my paper and picked out the ones that I liked, as well as grabbing some cardboard and marking that onto some different paper for the cover. Then I am just punching holes into the side of that so that I can connect all of the pieces with jump rings, but you could totally just thread string through these or even use paper binders if you wanted to. I'm grabbing my glue and dotting all corners so that it doesn't peel up, as well as adding that to the middle. While placing them on, I'm smoothing them out with a popsicle stick so that everything will be smooth and without air bubbles. I'm using those covers as a template to trace out all of the pieces of paper that I want and cutting that. I made sure to mark where I needed to hole punch so that all of them would line up as well. I joined those with the jump rings, and my little squirrel friend that eats birdseed off of my window came by. His name is Mr. Tumnus. He's very cute. I quickly headed outside to grab some stuff for the inside of the notebook, and I picked up a couple of flowers and leaves. I then headed back inside and got my big gardening book out and laid scrap pieces of paper beneath and above the plants and flowers that I gathered to press them. Now you need to wait at least half a day for these to set. I waited 24 hours, and the next day when I took them out, they turned out so good. Here it is. Next up is this old jean skirt that we are going to turn into an apron, but you could also use shorts or jeans for this, but I just cut down the middle, removing the zipper. Then I'm going to cut out the two back panels, then cut those panels in half to create 4 different ones. Evening those up, I grabbed my flat iron and started just flattening out the edges because they were super wrinkly and we want them as smooth as possible. All I have to do to the main apron part is just fold down the edges and sew that. So I grabbed all my pieces and headed over to my sewing machine, where I added those strips on top of each other to create 2 separate lengths of fabric that are going to be the waist ties. Then I just folded in the sides of those and hemmed them to make them look a bit more neat, and I did that to both of them. To the actual apron part, I am just hemming the sides, folding over those raw edges, and doing the same to the other side. With the strips that we made earlier, I'm going to attach those to the existing apron to create the waist ties. Folding in the ends of those waist ties, we are done with the base apron, but I wanted to add a little something extra, so I took the dress that I no longer wanted and seam ripped the entire lace off of the bottom. This took me over an hour. It was absolutely ridiculous. I measured how much I needed, cut off that much, and if you don't have lace, you could totally use ribbon or even fabric that is gathered. I think that would be so cute, but I just straight stitched mine onto the bottom, and here it is. For the third DIY, we are making some cozy cottage socks. Now my first attempt at this was rather bad. I just cut around the sock and didn't pay much attention to the proper shape. So after I pinned and sewed it, it just wasn't to my liking. So the second time around, I grabbed some paper and made a proper pattern with basic just oval sock shapes, but with one of the pieces I am doing half circles coming out of the side for the heel, and then I pinned those together and grabbed my elastic after I sewed it, measuring my ankle and then making the elastic into a circle. I am making a copy of that for my other sock and sewing that as well. Then I'm turning my sock inside out and putting that little circle around it and sewing the elastic to the sock. The last thing to do is just fold over that top edge and sew it down, but here they are. Next up, we have this pair of jeans that we are turning into a book cover. So I cut out the widest leg point, sliced those down the middle, and then grabbed my Nancy Drew bungalow mystery. I couldn't find one about a cottage, unfortunately, but I cut out the general shape and repeated that 4 times. Going over to my sewing machine. After that horrible experience, I just laid those on top of each other and put all 4 of them together. I think this is such an easy project because all of the stitching is really straight and simple, but after those were combined, I put them on my book and cut the amount that I needed for the inside because it was way too big. Then I just hemmed all of the sides of that. Once again, trying it on my book, I got the proper measurement for the casing that I needed for the cover to go inside. Folded that, pinned it, and sewed down so that I actually had the little areas for the cover to go into and stay. That's how that looked. That fit really well, but I wanted to once again add a little something extra, so we are going to make some DIY patches. You could totally just paint directly onto the cover, and I think that'd be so cute, but I kind of wanted this texture vibe, so I drew out some basic shapes and painted them in, going for a really rustic, just fun look, not trying to be too perfect. After cutting those out, I played with the arrangement a little bit and pinned them down and started stitching. You could also glue these on, but here is the final product. Last but most definitely not least, we are making a backpack. So with these 2 pieces of material, I'm first seam ripping this one because it had previously been sewn into what I think was meant to be a pillow, but the seams were falling apart and I had to seam rip the entire thing. Cutting off the excess because the material was ruined from the seams ripping. I cut out a rectangle out of one of the layers to make this flap portion, then cutting 4-inch wide long strips for the straps out of my other piece of material. After turning it inside out, I stitched down the entire side as well as the bottom to make the actual backpack portion. Flipping that right side out, here's how that looked. I hemmed the entire flap portion, so that was all nice, as well as the inside. Onto the straps, I'm folding them in half as well as folding in the edges, just like I did with the scrunchies in my last video, sewing down that entire thing so that you have a nice edge, doing that to both pieces, and then folding over the ends just to make that look nicer. Grabbing my backpack, I put those at the top where I wanted them to lay and stitched those down. If you want maximum security, you can do a couple rows of stitching. I tried it on and sewed the bottoms to where I wanted them, and here it is. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like it and subscribe for future content. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.